Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and mercy and blessings be upon you. Thank you for coming and thank you for watching. This is the second part of the sharing about our brother Malcolm X. So in the first half, in the first part, we actually covered the you can say pre-Islamic life of Malcolm X, the earlier life of we know he lost his father when he was very young, and his mother had mental health issues due to the stress of raising so many children by herself. And he was then sent to foster homes, and then he was treated in a, at that time, our perspective, very racist manner. He was pushed to the edge of society, marginalized, as were many of his brethren. He was made to become a criminal by the conditions that the society provided him. He had no choice but to live a life of sin and crime, and then eventually he was put into jail for robbery and other crimes. So just like he said later in speeches that I showed last time, he would tell people that, our government works this way. They produce alcohol, they sell them to you, and put you in prison for being drunk. They make and produce the play cards and put you in jail for gambling. So it's a very hypocritical government from his standpoint. And then what gave him hope when he was in prison was a person who belongs to an organization called Nation of Islam. So he was very much against religion before he got in touch with this person. Actually, his nickname was Satan because of his anti-religious attitude and his, rash personality. Even the inmates called him Satan because of how harsh he was. But since he got in touch with this person, at first it was a enlightenment not about the purpose of life or spirituality. It is an enlightenment about the situation of the black people in America. Why is this happening to us? Why are we being oppressed? Why don't we have an equal standing? Why are we having this struggle for rights and for prosperity and for welfare? So all of these questions were answered by this inmate who belongs to the organization called Nation of Islam. So he became interested in this religion, Islam. But of course, later we would know that Nation of Islam actually preaches a version of Islam that is unorthodox, that is quite far away from the true teachings of Islam. As the founder of this organization, Elijah Muhammad, claimed to be a messenger of God, and that is in clear and direct contradiction to one of the fundamental beliefs of Islam, which is that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the last messenger of God, and there shall be no one after him. But the founder claimed to be a messenger of God. So clearly, you can see that this organization is more political, perhaps, than it is religious. And then, while he was in prison, he learned a lot. He used to joke that he got his master's degree in prison. He read a lot, and he started developing his, subhanAllah, amazing linguistic ability, his amazing eloquence, his amazing debating skills. He used to join debates in the prison, and he used to make those chaplains, those Christian priests who would come to try to, educate or inculcate the black people of Christianity. He used to put them speechless due to his, sharp mind and his eloquence. And then once he was really wanted to do his part to pay this favor that Nation of Islam has done to him, so he immediately joined this nation. And to make the long story short, he soon became a very important figure in the nation, representing the ideologies and the messages that this so-called Nation of Islam preached and proposed. So he was a loyal follower of this Elijah Muhammad, who claimed to be a messenger, and he was very, very passionate about the cause of Nation of Islam. He would publicly criticize all white people collectively for the crimes that they've done, for the calamities that posed upon the black people, for all of the problems and troubles that exist in American society. He used to be very militant. He's always very militant and very direct and very open and unfrightened about his statements. He used to be very true to what he believed. So he wouldn't be politically correct. That was not a concern for him. He says what he believes. He says what he thinks. So obviously, while he's gaining popularity and status inside the Nation of Islam, he's also gaining a lot of doubts and criticism outside the Nation of Islam. Because even from our standpoint as Muslims now, we can see that that idea that all white people are devils, as he believed and as Elijah Muhammad taught, was incorrect. Even from an Islamic perspective, it was incorrect. It was extreme, and it was unfair to say that all white people are devils. But since they lived in that particular social context, the majority of black people had a first-hand experience how the majority, and it's easy for people to generalize, but since the majority of the white people that they've encountered have done some kind of harm to them, one way or another, so they bought this kind of preaching. They submitted themselves to this ideology that all white people are devils. Now, so last time we stopped at a point where Malcolm X became a very, influential, but at the same time controversial figure in American society. He was well known not only by the black Muslims, but also by, politically active white journalists, and across many different a large spectrum. And he would frequently appear on TV, on radio programs, on a lot of interviews to defend Elijah Muhammad and to illustrate and to further explain the messages of the Nation of Islam. And while all of this was happening, obviously there are Orthodox Muslims. There are Muslims from Saudi Arabia, from the Middle East, from Pakistan. Maybe was there Pakistan at the time? When was Pakistan founded? 1947. 1947. So Pakistan was there. There could be South Asian Muslims from different parts of the world. And when they were observing this influential leader, eloquent leader, charismatic, powerful speaker, says that all white people are devils, and they're like, wait a minute, we don't believe that. We are Muslims and we don't believe that. That's not true. So they started also writing letters to Malcolm X, trying to get in touch with him, trying to remind him of the fact that this message you're preaching has no root in Islam. It is from this person, this is from this organization, but it's not from Islam. So this Malcolm's reputation has reached beyond American society. It has reached African countries. It has reached the Middle Eastern countries. He has become an international figure representing the struggle of American black people for their equal rights and their equal standing. Now, there are two things. As I mentioned, Malcolm X had been very loyal to this organization. He had been very supportive, 100% supportive, or even submissive to everything that Elijah Muhammad taught him to do. He was very disciplined in a way, and all of the members are the same. They're trained this way. But there are two things that gradually changed the relationship between Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam. Two causes or two reasons that actually eventually made Malcolm X leave this organization and to expose the reality of it. The first thing that caused this was actually the popularity of Malcolm X. SubhanAllah, there are many ahadith and ayat in the Quran that talk about the danger of hasad, of envy and jealousy. When you are jealous of somebody, when you are envious of somebody, you might end up doing things to that person that you never thought you would do. It was driven by envy and jealousy. It is a very strong and a very evil feeling, and it really drives people to extreme actions. So the other ministers who might have joined the Nation of Islam much earlier than Malcolm X, who might have worked much harder than Malcolm X, who might have contributed more to the Nation of Islam than Malcolm X, but they were not enjoying as much attention and support and love and respect and popularity from the public than Malcolm X. So they became jealous, they became envious, and they started, instigating hatred against Malcolm X. They started spreading rumors about Malcolm X. For example, they said that Malcolm X is appearing on so many programs and so many public occasions to pile money for himself. This is one of their allegations, that he's actually doing all of this for his own benefit. Whereas later on, we would see the reality. When Malcolm X went for Hajj, he didn't even have the money for Hajj. He borrowed money from his half-sister Ella. That shows the integrity of this man. And he truly thought that if he passed away, the Nation of Islam would take care of his wife and children. So he didn't even save anything for himself. His wife had a big argument with him about this. His wife said, at least you should save something for our family, for ourselves. But Malcolm said that, no, if anything happens to me, the nation will take care of you and my children. And he said himself, he wrote himself, how wrong I could not have been more wrong. Because later he realized the nation had no concern for him whenever he became, on the opposite stance. Anyway, so that's the first reason. The other ministers or the other personnel in the Nation of Islam who were jealous of his status, who were, envious of his popularity, they started instigating all of this trouble and hatred and rumors about Malcolm X. They also told Elijah Muhammad that he's trying to replace you. He's going for leadership. He's trying to make this nation his own organization. He's trying to obtain power for himself. And any leader who leads for a worldly benefit, any leader who leads for a worldly gain is super, super, super cautious about other people who might take their position. They are threatened by it. So Elijah Muhammad, due to these rumors, he felt very threatened by Malcolm X as well, because clearly Elijah Muhammad was not nearly as known as Malcolm X at that time. So it was already a trend that Malcolm X might replace Elijah Muhammad to be the spiritual leader and symbol of this organization. That's the first reason. The second reason was actually the exposure of many defects in the personal life of Elijah Muhammad, this man who claims to be a messenger of God. And it was not any minor mistake. It was not small things that he did wrong. He was actively and continuously involved in adultery, zina, with many of his personal secretaries. He made many of his secretaries pregnant while preaching that I'm the messenger of God and I'm representing Islam. I'm teaching you the truth. I'm liberating the black people. I'm helping you all. So Malcolm X had doubts. How can it be that a so-called messenger of God has such a defectful personal life while telling us to do better? He doesn't understand. He actually confronted him once, and Elijah Muhammad defended himself by saying that, read about David, read about Solomon, read about these other prophets. Of course, he was talking about the biblical version of them, because in the Bible, all of these prophets, subhanallah, it is false allegation from our perspective, but in the Bible, all of these prophets have terrible lifestyle. David, according to the Bible, had sexual intercourse with his own daughters. Is it Solomon or someone else? I forgot. One of the other prophets, he killed a general in order to sleep with his wife. They were in the Bible there were such descriptions of prophets and messengers. So Elijah Muhammad said, I'm just fulfilling a prophecy. This is how prophets have always been. And he urged Malcolm X to remain loyal and true to this bond and this submission. And at first, Malcolm X did choose to submit and to believe in all of these excuses. But he was a wise man. He was not a blind follower. He was a very independent thinking person. So although outwardly he was still, abiding to the rules, and he was still supportive to Elijah Muhammad, but inside him there were doubts growing, and there were struggles happening. And this period of time, he had really strong struggles. It's a struggle between gratitude towards Elijah Muhammad and genuine doubt of his integrity. He was still grateful to him. And subhanAllah, in the Quran, we know that one of the evil person that ever existed on earth was Fir'aun, right? He killed babies every other year. this person would enslave an entire nation, right? This person would boast that I am God. Ana rabbukumul a'la. I am your highest God. What else can you worship? So this evil person, even him, when Musa alayhi salam confronted him, he said, "Didn't I raise you when you were young?" And Musa alayhi salam said, "That is a favor you did to me." He acknowledged the favor. So for Muslims, we never deny a person's value completely just because of one thing he did. We are always against actions rather than the person, the being, this existence itself. So Musa alayhi salam said, "You are an evil person. I'm calling you to the straight path. But yes, you did do a favor to me when I was young." Similarly, Malcolm X, even after exposing the mistakes and the troublesome personality of the reality of Elijah Muhammad, he still was very grateful to him. He was still very respectful to him, and this also shows um, the tolerance and the honesty of Malcolm X. He didn't deny this person altogether. He didn't go on rage against him and try to fight him, try to be hostile against him. No, he remained fair and just, even though he was treated unfairly and unjustly. So these are the two things that really worsened the relationship between Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam. One thing is jealousy against him, envy against him, and the second thing was the reality of Elijah Muhammad started exposing to the surface. Now, there was one incident which was the direct cause of Malcolm X leaving the Nation of Islam, but that was not the root cause. It was just an excuse used by Elijah Muhammad to silence him. It was the assassination of John F. Kennedy. So when JFK was assassinated, he was one of the most respected American president, most beloved American president. His approval rating when he was assassinated was 70%, and it was one of the highest among all of the American presidents. He was charming, people loved him, and he just assumed office for a few years. He didn't even complete his first term. So there was a strong emotion, love and concern and respect towards this man when he was assassinated. But then, as I said, Malcolm was a very honest man. He doesn't care about political correctness. He doesn't care about PR influence, public relations. So when the journalist asked him, "What do you think about the assassination of John F. Kennedy?" he used the term "chickens come home to roost." Yani you reap what you sow. In other words, he said basically, I can understand why this is happening, and it's normal that this is happening. You guys didn't expect this. Basically, he was saying that it should have happened. Not so much that J.F. Kennedy deserves it, but the country collectively, as a system, sowed the own seed, sowed this problem, which the chickens come home to roost, which resulted in such a disaster. So he didn't say that it's a good thing that Kennedy was assassinated, but he was saying that it could be predicted. This is a result that could be predicted. But by saying this, and you can see now that Elijah Muhammad was not for truth, he was for PR. He was for the image of Nation of Islam in front of American public and how much benefit they can make from that. So he was very, very angry, and he silenced Malcolm X for, I believe, 90 days, if I remember correctly. So this became a turning point of the relationship between Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad. During his silencing period, as a public figure, if you leave the public sphere for a period of time, you don't just say who you were, because other people will say things about you and you can't defend yourself anymore. Malcolm X was silenced for 90 days. During these 90 days, the other ministers who were jealous of him and envious of him started throwing all kinds of allegations about him. He betrayed, he's a traitor, he's a hypocrite, he was falsely accusing the messenger, which is Elijah Muhammad, in their eyes. So they accused him of many things, and eventually even some local ministers in some cities issued death threats to Malcolm X, or issued even summoning the members to go and kill Malcolm X. It has gone to that point. Now, before we go to, so what happened? What did Malcolm decide to do? Before we go to that, black Muslim personality in American history at the same time, who also had a huge influence on the world, and who was very close with Malcolm X, and everyone would know his name. He is Muhammad Ali, the boxer, the world champion, people's champ, Muhammad Ali. By birth, his name was Cassius Clay, right? So when Malcolm met him, he was not world champion yet. He was just a young lad trying to be world champion, like many other young boxers who were trying to be world champion. So when Malcolm met him, he was very humorous about this when he wrote this. He said Cassius came up and pumped my hand, introducing himself as he later presented himself to the world. I am Cassius Clay. He acted as if I was supposed to know who he was. So I acted as though I did. Up to that moment, though, I had never ever heard of him. So at this time, Muhammad Ali was not famous. He was not popular. He was not well known yet. But this also shows the. So Malcolm X was sort of like a wise person. If you have that confidence to think that I'm supposed to know you, then I'll just cooperate. I'll just pretend I know you, right? Maybe you will be a bigger shot later on, and then we already have a foundation for relationship. So Cassius Clay, who later became Muhammad Ali, accepted Islam also by the influence of Malcolm X. And actually, before the big fight against Livingston, what's his name? Sonny Livingston, I think. Before that big fight, which made Muhammad Ali a world champion, he met Malcolm X just before that fight. And Malcolm made dua with him and gave him a lot of advice, not in boxing, but in life in general, in spirituality. So you can still read that in the later life of Muhammad Ali, he was very much, how to say, he remembered Malcolm X vividly, and he had a very good impression of him. Now, so at this juncture in history, when Malcolm X, you can imagine, he was abandoned by the organization that he dedicated his life to. He was willing to die for the Nation of Islam, and now the Nation of Islam has silenced him. They were throwing allegations against him. They were spreading rumors against him, and they were even issuing death threats to him. Imagine that feeling, like you are being betrayed by the person you trust the most, by the group you trust the most, by the group that you think you belong to. Think for a moment that your family members discard you. That's what it feels like. When your mother and father tell you that you are the worst human being we've ever seen. That is the kind of feeling Malcolm X was experiencing. So he was, stressed, and he was sad. He was anxious. He didn't know where to go next. And it just so happened that he feared that I want to go to Hajj. I want to go to pilgrimage. I want to see what Islam really is. I want to see what Islam teaches. Half sister Ella to borrow money to go to Hajj, but he went eventually, right? And this famous episode, I would say, of Malcolm X's life. There's a whole chapter in his autobiography, chapter 17, called Mecca. Every single sentence in this chapter is worth reading, subhanAllah. So, I have limited time, so I'll just go through a few interesting incidents with you. But I encourage you to read this book by yourself. You'll learn a lot. Now, when he went for Hajj, he didn't know how to speak Arabic. He never learned how to speak Arabic. Even when he was conducting his prayer before he went for Hajj, he was doing it in English. So when we say Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik ashhadu la ilaha illa ant, he would say, "Glory be to you, Lord of all honor and dignity." So he would read the prayer in English. Now when he went to Saudi Arabia, first thing is, before he went, there was a Saudi doctor who was in America, who had been following Malcolm X. So he wrote a letter to him and introduced him to a close friend of his in Saudi Arabia, who was a person of status and position. So he basically told him that you go, if you encounter any trouble, then you contact this person. He will help you out, right? So Malcolm went. He didn't want to bother anybody. So he arrived at Cairo first, Egypt. He traveled for a week, sightseeing, and then he went to Jeddah. At the Jeddah airport, the customs stopped him because Mecca, as we know, actually before he entered Mecca, he was at Jeddah airport, but he stated that my purpose of visiting is to go to Hajj, go to Mecca. So the customs officer said, Mecca is a haram, is a prohibited region for non-Muslims. It's only, entry is only permitted for Muslims. So are you a Muslim? And he said, yes, I am a Muslim. And he said, how do you prove that? He's like, uh, how do I prove that? He didn't even know how to utter the Shahada in Arabic, right? So this is a hard situation. He was basically detained at the border. And they even took his passport. They said, well, cause some people will ask about it. You just stay put for a while. And this detainment continued for 2 to 3 days. He became a refugee at the Jeddah airport, basically. But these 3 days were a very funny period of time, which he observed a lot, he experienced a lot, he reflected a lot. One of the things so there were other detainees with him. Some of them maybe they were waiting for other people to come and join them, or they were waiting to contact the person who will take them, different issues, but they were all at the airport stranded. So one of the episodes that I find really humorous was this. So he was trying to communicate with all of these people around him, Arabs, mostly, Saudis and other people from other Arab countries, Egyptians, Lebanese, etc. He was trying to communicate with them. Some of them spoke 20 English words, and they would have very random conversations. Like eventually, Malcolm would just go sky, and this sama, nah, sama, sky. They would just exchange words. There was no meaningful conversation whatsoever, until um, until he was just trying random words, right? Because he gave up, basically. You guys don't understand what I'm saying. I cannot explain my problem to any of you. He just gave up. So he was just playing with them, and he accidentally said this Muhammad Ali clay. And he said everybody lighted up like Christmas tree. When they heard Muhammad Ali, everybody lighted up like Christmas tree and stared at him. I said, you, Muhammad Ali? He said, no, a friend of mine, my friend. So clearly, Muhammad Ali had a much wider fan base than Malcolm X. He was much more well known. So from there, people got to know that he's American Muslim, and the treatment or the reaction that he got by telling people that he was an American Muslim is similar to the reaction I got when I go to Morocco and told them that I'm a Chinese Muslim. And I told this story to some people. Like, I went to the police station because my wallet was stolen, and I was wearing a white topi, a cap. Um, when I travel to Muslim lands, I want people to identify me as a Muslim. It was like a security card, so they don't try to tip me off or anything. So I was wearing this cap, and the police officer is like, "You Muslim?" I said, "Yes, Alhamdulillah, I'm a Muslim." He said, "You Chinese?" I said, "Yes, I'm Chinese, if that's what you mean." He said, "You Chinese Muslim?" Well, if you put it together, that's what it would be. And he jumped off his seat, going around, Allahu Akbar, Muslim Sini, Huya, Muslim Sini, Huya, Muslim Sini. Goes around the office, tells everybody he just found an endangered species, Chinese Muslim he's never met before. So the same kind of reaction and treatment Malcolm X got when he told people that he's from America, US. And people are like, Muslim Ameriki, Muslim Ameriki. They've never heard of an American Muslim before. This was 50 years ago. Islam was very new in America, and travel was not that easy. So people were, excited about this American Muslim brother, and they were passionate to communicate with him, although it was very hard. So on page 338, what did I want to say on this page? Give me a minute. Yep. So eventually, he remembered that he had this letter, which he got in America by this doctor, Saudi doctor. So he got a letter, and he went to the customs again. And one of the police officers could speak. One of the officials could speak English. He said he explained to them that he's a Muslim from America. I could almost see it capture their imaginations and curiosity. They were very impressed. I asked the English-speaking one if he would please do me a favor of telephoning Dr. Omar Azam, which is the contact person that he had in the letter, at the number I had. He was glad to do it. He got someone on the phone and conversed in Arabic. And it so happened that this Dr. Omar Azam is not an ordinary person. He was a United Nations spokesperson for Saudi Arabia. He was a very, very powerful man. He was in politics. He was, close to the royal family, etc. He was a powerful man. And shortly, Dr. Omar Azam came straight to the airport with the 4 officials beaming. He welcomed me, a young, tall, powerful built man. I'd say he was 6'3". That's like 188 centimeters tall. He had an extremely polished manner. In America, he would have been called a white man. But it struck me hard and instantly from the way he acted. I had no feeling of him being a white man. Why didn't you call before? He demanded of me. He showed some identification to the four officials and he used their phone. Speaking in Arabic, he was talking with some airport officials. Come, he said, yalla. Just like that. He just made a phone call, talk to some officials, problem solved. By the way, that's still how you solve problems in Saudi Arabia. If you know important people, khalas, yalla, come, you can come. Problems become easy. In something less than half an hour, he had gotten me released. My suitcase and passport had been retrieved from customs, and we were in Dr. Azam's car, driving through the city of Jeddah with me dressed in the ihram, 2 towels and sandals. I was speechless at the man's attitude and at my own physical feeling of no difference between us as human beings. I had heard for years of Muslim hospitality, but one couldn't quite imagine such warmth. I asked questions. Dr. Azam was a Swiss-trained engineer. His field was city planning. The Saudi Arabian government had borrowed him from the United Nations to direct all of the reconstruction work being done on Arabian holy places. So basically, this important person treated him with great hospitality, and he felt great honor and dignity being offered, and he was very moved by it. And this stands out as a very clear contrast with the American society, because in America, there was a very sharp conflict between white people and black people. Even for the well-wishing white men, even nowadays, we still know that race problem is one of the biggest problems in America, right? Police brutality and the white man not being courageous enough to call black people black because of the 300, 400 years of history, right? They're just like, my African American friend told me the other day, or they would even when they go to Starbucks, white man ordering, black man behind him. What would you like, sir? Can I have a tall African American, please? Doesn't even dare to say black coffee. And then the black man comes up. I'd like to have a Grandi Caucasian, thank you. So if you are using a different term for black, I'm using a different term for white, and they're trying to be polite. But even this politeness shows the great problem of race tensions in America. So he didn't feel this. He felt natural. He felt the same. He felt like this Dr. Azam had no interest in his color. Like they were just unconscious of the complexion, the color of your complexion. He was just generally warm to him as a brother, as a human being. He's never felt this before. He's never experienced this before. It totally broadened his horizon and changed his perception of race, of what it means to be a human being. Primarily before this, he primarily identified himself as a black person, and that was pushed into him by the American social context, social environment. He has to be very clearly black to be identified and recognized for what he was struggling for. But in Saudi Arabia, when he went, nobody even cared about race. You're a Muslim or non-Muslim. It's as simple as that. So it really opened his eyes to a new dimension of life. And then the famous letter, when he did tawaf, when he did go to Hajj, participated in all of the actions, the traditions that came all the way down from Ibrahim alayhi salam. He did all of those. He prayed with other people. He ate with other people. He slept in the same tent as other people from different races. There were Arabs, Asians, right, Europeans. So he was really moved by this. So the famous letter, right? Many of us have heard this letter being propagated by different media platforms. He wrote a very long letter, many letters, primarily to his wife, Betty. He wrote, and I'll just read a few short sentences. He said, "Never have I witnessed such sincere hospitality and the overwhelming spirit of true brotherhood as is practiced by people of all colors and races here in this ancient Holy Land, the home of Abraham, Muhammad, and all the other prophets of the Holy Scriptures, alayhimus salam. For the past week, I have been utterly speechless and spellbound by the graciousness I see displayed all around me by people of all colors." Once and once, over and over again, he's emphasizing all colors, the difference, the diversity, but the unity despite this diversity. He also said that America needs to understand Islam. 50 years ago, he said America needs to understand Islam because this is the one religion that erases from its society the race problem. Throughout my travels in the Muslim world, I have met, talked to, and even eaten with people who in America would have been considered white but the white attitude was removed from their minds by the religion of Islam. I have never before seen sincere and true brotherhood practiced by all colors together, irrespective of their color. Again, the same message. And he said, you may be shocked by these words coming from me, but on this pilgrimage, what I have seen and experienced has forced me to rearrange much of my thought patterns previously held, and to toss aside some of my previous conclusions. And this is really one of the major features of Malcolm X that deserves our respect and admiration. He was a man that was not shy to change, to reinvent himself, to re-establish his beliefs based on reality. And he would say that this was not too difficult for me. Despite my firm convictions, I have always been a man who tries to face facts and to accept the reality of life as new experience and new knowledge unfolds it. I have always kept an open mind, which is necessary to the flexibility that must go hand in hand with every form of intelligent search for truth. Now, what can we learn from this? Each of us is born into a specific family that practice Islam in one specific way. Is it the correct way or not? We had no way to know when we were young. We just follow what our parents do. We just follow what our community do, right? We just follow what our society is used to. So when we were growing up as children, we think this is Islam. There are some Muslims who would sanctify a tomb. They would go to a graveyard and do some actions. And if a person grew up in that environment, he would think this is Islam. And once he goes out and encounter people who is very harsh or critical, this is shirk. You shouldn't do this. You're a Muslim. What are you doing? This is against monotheism. He was like, what are you? I've been doing this all my life. This is Islam. What are you talking about? But the thing is, we have to keep an open mind. We have to accept the reality of life as new experience and new knowledge unfolds it. This is, a really, really special feature of Islam. In other religions, you follow your denomination, I follow my denomination, and we can be at peace. But for Muslims, there's only one truth, right? There cannot be two interpretations that are, opposing to each other, but be true at the same time. It cannot be. God can either be one or not one. There's no interpretation of, he's many, but he's one at the same time. It's three in one, one in three. No, the truth is simple and straightforward and one. It's unified. But the thing is, we have to look for it. We have to struggle to gain experience and knowledge to reach that destination, to reach that one truth. And this is why Allah tells us that the journey of Islam is a path. It's a sirat. It's a road. It is not one point. You have to move. If you're static and stagnant at one point, chances are you are close to the truth, but maybe not exactly at the truth. So Muslims are encouraged to, as Malcolm X did, when we discover that some of our previously held beliefs are wrong or against Islam, right? If your community or your society or your parents are doing something that later on with knowledge, authentic knowledge and information you found is wrong, you should be brave enough to say this is wrong in a nice way, to toss aside and to face the reality of life. This is really what we can learn from Malcolm X. So moving on. After this journey, he became a new Malcolm X. He was reinvented. He was a different person altogether. Previously, he was militant. He was hateful against all white people. He claimed that all white people are devils without exception. He was a loyal follower of Elijah Muhammad without any, personal opinion that contradicts his. He was a representative of the Nation of Islam and not truly a representative of his own thoughts. But after this journey, after he went back to America, he became an independent thinker. He became an independent activist. And he was brave enough to change his perceptions. Let's watch a short video here, just 3 minutes.
This is always, I've always had the name on my passport, Malik al-Shabbat. I only used it in the Muslim world. Well, Hajj is a title that is given to any Muslim who makes the pilgrimage to Mecca during the official Hajj season. Well, will you now use Shabazz and drop X? I'll probably continue to use Malcolm X because, I'll probably use it as long as the situation that produced it exists. going to Mecca and going into the Muslim world, into the African world, and being recognized and accepted as a Muslim and as a brother may solve the problem for me personally. But I personally feel that my personal problem is never solved as long as the problem is not solved for all of our people in this country. So I remain Malcolm X as long as there is a need to protest and struggle and fight against the injustices that our people are involved in this country.
It's difficult for him to go into the United Nations at this point and ask that charges be brought against the United States for its treatment of American Negroes.
Oh yeah. Please. The audience will have to be quiet. Yes, as I pointed out when I was during my travel, that nations look, African nations and Asian nations and Latin American nations look very hypocritical when they stand up in the United Nations condemning the racist practices of South Africa and that which is practiced by Portugal and Angola, and saying nothing in the UN about the racist practices that are manifest every day against Negroes in this society. Even in South Africa, those Africans aren't faced with bayonets and aren't faced with police dogs.
Sorry,
I would be the opinion that to say you're going to lead something creates a lot with if this problem is brought before the United Nations. Have you had it this time? But one thing I found in my travels, all of them looked upon us as their long lost brother.
You realize the implication is that you have had such commitments when you say
this is your interpretation of what I said. One thing that I found in all of my travels was that all of the Africans, not only Africans but the Asians and the Muslims, look upon us as their long lost brothers. And America had actually tricked many of them into a hands-off policy by giving them the impression that she was honestly trying to do something to solve the problem. My argument over there was designed to prove that it is impossible for the United States government to solve the race problem. It's impossible.
on your trip abroad, you said you sensed feeling of great brotherhood, and that conceivably you would be working toward integration in this country now. At least this is what you're reported to have said. Any comment on it?
I don't think that I ever mentioned anything about working toward integration. They haven't even got integration right here in New York City. You have worse integration problems in the North than they have in the South. So if it doesn't work if you can't bring about integration in New York City, as international, cosmopolitan, up to date as it's supposed to be, you'll never get integration anywhere else in the country.
You're prepared to work with civil leaders.
Yeah, this is the part I want you to
civil
see.
rights organizations.
Certainly. We will work with any groups, organizations, or leaders in any way, as long as it's genuinely designed to get results.
So the same question was asked to him before his pilgrimage, and he would say, "No way, I would never work with the white devil, and they will never be sincere in the struggle for the liberation of our people." But here he changed his narrative altogether. He said, "Certainly, we would work with any well-wishing individual who is sincere and genuine in trying to solve and help."
Can you fear it have any religious significance?
No, not particularly, but I do think that you find black people in America, as they strive to throw off the shackles of mental colonialism, will also probably reflect an effort to throw off the shackles of cultural colonialism, and they may begin to reflect desires of their own, with standards of their own.
Malcolm, some more controversial remarks was a call for black people to get rifles and form rifle clubs sometime back.
I've mentioned this last time, so I just stop here. Now, to give you a more concrete idea of how much the change was, in terms of his political stance and narrative, when he was asked about this issue, "Are you willing now to work with white people?" he said, "My pilgrimage broadened my scope. It blessed me with a new insight. In 2 weeks in the Holy Land, I saw what I never had seen in 39 years here in America. I saw all races, all colors, blue-eyed blondes to black-skinned Africans in true brotherhood, in unity, living as one, worshipping as one. No segregationists, no liberals. They would not have known how to interpret the meaning of these words." And he said, "In the past, yes, I have made sweeping indictments of all white people, and never will be guilty of that again." He didn't, for a public figure, normally, even if they realize they said something wrong before, they made a mistake before, many of the American presidents have been have been impeached for something they said before, right? What they normally do what they normally do is to find an excuse or to interpret it in another way and say, no, you misunderstand me. I said this, but what I meant was, they try to find a way for themselves to be clean, as if it's okay. But Malcolm X said, I never will be guilty of that again. Meaning, I was guilty of that. It was a guilt. It was a crime. It was wrong to make sweeping indictments of all white people. He was not shy to say I was wrong. And this is something amazing about Malcolm. We should all have this spirit of saying, I was wrong. And it's okay to be wrong. And he said, it's not shameful to have been a criminal. It is shameful to always be a criminal. You were wrong before, fine. Correct yourself. And the only person who can correct himself is the person who takes the step to recognize I was wrong, right? So we shouldn't be shy to admit our mistakes. This is different from exposing our sins. You know, in Islam, you're not encouraged to tell people what you did, but if you know that you did something, you can admit I was wrong before. I had a wrong, different lifestyle, and now I'm willing to change. And he said, as I know now that some white people are truly sincere, that some truly are capable of being brotherly towards a black man, the true Islam has shown me that a blanket indictment of all white people is as wrong as when whites make blanket indictments against blacks. The true Islam has shown me. He didn't say that my travels have shown me. Islam has shown me the message of Islam. Okay, 382. Okay. Since I learned the truth in Mecca, my dearest friends have come to include all kinds. Some Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, agnostics, and even atheists. I have friends who are called capitalists, socialists, and communists. Some of my friends are moderates, conservatives, extremists. Some are even Uncle Toms. My friends today are black, brown, red, yellow, and white. This challenges one notion or one assumption that once you get to know the truth, you will leave everyone alone. You will be on your highway. It's my way or the highway. You will be on your own way. It's my way or the highway. I have the truth now. I'm upon the haqq, right? Some people have this attitude. I'm upon the haqq. I shall not deal with the infidels, the kuffar, and the wrongdoing Muslims and the mushrikun Muslims and this Muslims and not Muslims, the titles, labels. I am upon the haqq. I am following the truth. So I have nothing to do with you. But the thing is, if you are truly upon the truth, then that's more the reason you should befriend these people, to bring them out of the falsehood, to bring them out of the darkness into light. What's the point of you knowing the truth if you hold it for yourself, if you hide it behind a room? So similarly, Malcolm X he wouldn't understand. Sometimes he would argue with Arabs about da'wah. He said, it's my duty to go and tell people what I found out. And the Arabs are always like, inshallah, Allah will guide them. It's like, no, Allah will guide them through me. I have to do my job. I have to sort of provide a means, right? Otherwise, why would I be here? So he acknowledges his mission. So here, the point I want to make is, Islam is, we truly believe and firmly believe it is the only truth of the universe. It is the only divine knowledge about the reality of life. However, that doesn't mean we become hostile against other understandings. Rather, we acknowledge the diversity as a decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If he wanted the world to be unified, he could have done that. And this is said in the Quran. Allah said, if I want human beings to be like the same brand, I could have done that. It's easy. Allah created so many animals, you can't tell the difference. All zebras look the same to me. But he can't make human beings all the same. But he made this diversity, he created these differences, right? One reason is لِتَعَارَفُونَ, so that you may know each other. In Surah al-Hujurat, different nations, different colors, different cultures, so that you may know each other. Every nation has strengths and weaknesses. We learn from each other. Another thing is the diversity exists as a reminder to people who are upon the truth that, first of all, be grateful for this. You are not, it's a blessing and it's a favor of Allah upon you that now you know the reality of life. There are so many people who don't yet. This is a favor, be grateful to it. And second of it, it's your duty to tell them, right? Otherwise, you have not benefited from your truth if you don't tell people about it. So Islam and diversity has a has a link here. We shouldn't become close-minded people. We shouldn't become self-centered people because of our truth. Okay, my time has about to come to an end. I'll just jump to his later his death. Now, during this time, when he went for Hajj, actually even before he went for Hajj, the Nation of Islam already attempted twice to assassinate him. Once a brother, so-called brother, a member of Nation of Islam, wired his car so that if he turned the engine, the car would explode. But this brother had so much admiration for Malcolm, he came and told him. And then Malcolm thanked him, and since that became more cautious and became more conscious of these attempts. Second time, they actually threw a Molotov into his house and burned his house to the ground at night while his wife and children are sleeping. They threw a Molotov, you know what is a Molotov? It's like a burning bottle, into the room of his children. This also shows the Nation of Islam, they are on a different agenda. They're not there to make Islam spread. They're there to make their ideology spread, the image of the organization. So when the journalist interviewed him, and after he came back from Hajj, he openly exposed the secrets of Elijah Muhammad and these conflicts inside the nation and the problems. So the journalist said that aren't you afraid for your life? We all know that Nation of Islam is such a powerful organization, and they have a secret group inside the nation called the Fruits of Islam. The Fruits of Islam are basically assassins, killers, hitmen, trained by Elijah Muhammad, personal guards, to take out anyone who dares saying something different from Elijah Muhammad. So the journalist asked, aren't you afraid for your life to say this, on record in public sphere? And Malcolm put on his typical boyish smile and said, oh, I'm probably a dead man already. He knew it. He knew it would happen. It was just a matter of time. And he was ready for it. He said, I'm probably a dead man already. And it's just amazing how the last, and the author, Alex Haley, who compiled all of this, who arranged all of these scripts, was also quite artistic in putting this paragraph as the last paragraph of the book before the epilogue. But these are the words of Malcolm, okay? He said this was before he was assassinated, maybe in the last year, 1965. He was assassinated in 1965. So in 1965, probably just a few months before he was assassinated, the last meeting with Alex Haley, he said, yes, I have cherished my demagogue role. I know that societies often have killed the people who have helped to change those societies. And if I can die, having brought any light, having exposed any meaningful truth that will help to destroy the racist cancer that is malignant in the body of America, then, let's stop there. What did he say? Then I would be happy. Then I would be satisfied. Then I would be proud. Then my life is worth it. No. If I could have brought any light and exposed any truth, then all of the credit is due to Allah. Only the mistakes have been mine. This is a person who understands why he is living. This is a person who now is clear about the purpose of life. He was ready to go, and he knew it has nothing to do with him. He's just here to deliver the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to help in the path of Allah. And he was assassinated in 1965. Can someone tell me, what do we say about a person who come back from Hajj, having completed all the rituals of Hajj? What do we say about such a person? We say that this person is clean as a baby. All of his sins are forgiven, and this is according to authentic hadith. Allah showed so much mercy to Malcolm that he took him to Hajj in 1964 and got him killed in 1965, so that he can die clean as a baby, despite him having been a criminal before, having been a robber before, having been a street rat before. He had an honorable death. He died 1 year after Hajj, and he died while he was on the pulpit, while he was delivering his last speech in downtown Boston, I believe. And the last words he said, wait, let me try to find it. When he said Assalamu alaikum, it's the beginning of his speech. Assalamu alaikum, people said Wa alaikum assalam very passionately. And he didn't even say anything else, and then a man shouted in the audience. It's like code language. It just means now. Take action now. This person shouted, "Take your hand out of my pocket." This is their code language. And then 3 men stood up, started shooting at him, and his last words are, "Let's quit, brothers. Let's quit, brothers." SubhanAllah. Many people, their last words in life are regretful if they died peacefully, or passionate if they died for a good cause, or angry if they died without accomplishing what they wanted to. Very few people in human history can die uttering something peaceful and cool. And he said, "Let's quit, brothers." And he died. He was shot many times, more than 20 times. 3 gunmen, two with revolvers, 1 with a shotgun. He was shot so many times that he couldn't even put his hand down before he fell down. He was shot so many times, his hands were in the air when he collapsed. And last time I already read the, what's that called? The eulogy that this American artist wrote for him. He called him our black manhood. He's our living manhood. And he called him the best of ourselves. We're not honoring this person. We're honoring the best of ourselves. We're honoring the black people through honoring him. So this happened on the 21st of February 1964. Sorry, this was in New York, Harlem. He was shot, and later on it was clear that the 3 gunmen were from the Nation of Islam. They were guilty of this crime, but we believe that the best death is to die in the path of Allah, is to die as a shaheed. وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَنْ يُقْتَلُ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٍ. Allah said, don't call those who were killed in the path of Allah dead. بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ. No, they're alive, but you don't understand, you don't perceive. There's a wisdom in saying, Allah didn't say, وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِلَّذِينَ مَاتُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ, those who died. He said those who were killed in the path of Allah. Because normally people who were killed are truly fighters, are truly firm upon the truth. So much so that the haters want to kill them, want to stop them from talking. So he was killed in the path of Allah, and we ask Allah to grant him the highest status in Jannah. And we ask Allah to allow us to enter Jannah so that we can have a conversation with Brother Malcolm in Jannah. This is one of my greatest motivations to work for Jannah. I wish I could hear by any means necessary in his own voice. And also, yeah, just to a little bit of add up, before his death in 1964, 1965, 2 years, I personally believe he achieved more than he ever achieved in his entire life. Now that after Hajj, he had a clear blueprint of how to solve the problem in America, he established his own organization, which is different from Nation of Islam, has no restriction on race or even religion. He said, I'm still a Muslim, but I'm willing to work with Christians, Jewish, Hindus, whatever, as long as you're trying to solve the problem. He visited so many countries. He appeared on Oxford Union, which is famous for debate. Even Churchill spoke at Oxford Union. He spoke at Oxford Union to bring the case, the American struggle, to the awareness of British people. He spoke at many African countries, and these African countries honored him so much. Nigeria called him Ummah, which in their local language means the lost son who has come home. And Malcolm X said, among all of the titles people have given me, this is my favorite. I feel truly honored by this name, the lost son who has come home. He felt that connection with African people. There's so much more to say about Malcolm X, and he is such a charismatic person. And for more information, you can read his book, The Autobiography of Malcolm X, or you can watch the movie. There was a movie called Malcolm X, played by Denzel Washington. He actually played very well, and it's a very good movie as well. You can watch that, and there are also documentaries online about Malcolm X. So the first, if you remember, last time I came, I had a different copy, the same book, different copy. That one was from Hong Kong Library. In order to do the second part, I purchased my own copy. Alhamdulillah. They changed the cover, so that one was very old. The Hong Kong Library copy was like literally from 1970s when the book was published. And on that book, Malcolm X had a very serious, militant, fighting face. But in the new edition, I really appreciate the publishers for putting on this, because this is actually the more frequent image of the true personal life of Brother Malcolm. He's always smiling, chivious smile, playful, humorous. You can read it in his words. He's humorous and fun. And he's very childlike. He's very simple, innocent, even naive sometimes. Right? He didn't fear his own death, and he didn't save up any money for himself. He didn't have money to shred himself, literally. but 1,500 people attended his janazah. And remember, this is 1965. There were not a lot of Muslims. It's not like nowadays. Maybe the community had entirely 2,000 people. 1,500 people attended his funeral. So, two parts of sharing cannot justify for how great this man is. We have a lot of shining stars in our ummah. And the reason for us to learn from these people is, first of all, to inspire ourselves. Second of all, to motivate ourselves. And third of all, to show us a direction where we can improve ourselves. So with that, I close. And unfortunately, I don't have time for questions today because I need to go catch a bus. I'm going to Shenzhen. But if you have any questions, you can tell Brother Adil, and I'd be happy to answer them later, inshallah. So, جزاكم الله خيرا. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.